What is Medicaid exactly? Is it a program that hundreds of thousands of American families rely on? Or is it a poorly veiled slush fund for the labor, the far left, and their conspirators? Actually, it seems to be both. My name is Siena, and in this episode of The New Frontline, I'm exposing how a bunch of money-hungry, conceited, self-absorbed leftists are abusing and taking advantage of the Medicaid system. Let's get to it.
Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look.
At the beginning of June, our CEO Aaron With co-authored an op-ed with economist Stephen Moore to talk about this issue stemming from the misuse of Medicaid. The op-ed is titled "Medicaid is a Slush Fund for Labor and the Left," and if you'd like to read it on your own, I'll have it linked in the YouTube episode description. But the op-ed is an important conversation on how a program that was all intended to help Americans has since been adopted into a legal scheme of blue state politicians and union leaders who want to skim more than a little off the top of the profits associated with union dues. What am I talking about exactly? I'm talking about how Medicaid doesn't work, and the people who rely on it for support and livelihood are being taken for chumps by selfish politicians and ill-intentioned union leaders. I'm also well aware that Medicaid, like its first cousins Medicare and Social Security, has long been recognized as the third rail of nation's politics for its incredible ability to instantly terminate the career of anyone who tries to challenge it or tries to change it. But lucky for us, I'm not a politician. Nor am I trying to challenge the core of the program. What I'm trying to do is tell you how a program that possesses all arrays of good intentions is being taken for a fool by seedy, prideful people. I want to start out by setting up how the Medicaid program works exactly. In this situation, there are two people. There is a caregiver and there is a care receiver. The care receiver will apply for Medicaid, so they are the client of the program / actual recipient of the benefits of the program. And whoever they select as their caregiver is the one who is receiving actual payment for the program, a stipend. The caregiver receives a stipend directly from Medicaid program on behalf of the care receiver. The caregiver is usually called an individual provider or an IP, and you'll hear me use that term for the rest of this episode. And they generally help with the activities of daily living, including caring for animals, cooking, cleaning, daily hygiene, etc. It's very necessary parts of daily living, but not quite administering hospital-level medicine. So legally, and most often from a training perspective, IPs are not nurses or trained as such, but they are providing a healthcare service in an intimate, home-oriented setting. Oftentimes, both the client and the IP are family members who are living together or have lived together at some point in time. So this program really has the capacity to provide support for families who are really, really in need of extra support. Today, about 20 to 30% of Americans rely on the Medicaid program, which is a sizable amount of people. It's grown in clients since the introduction of Obamacare because the Obama administration chose to expand the parameters of admission and funded that expansion to then make it happen. Medicaid, for anyone who wasn't aware, is a jointly funded venture between each state and the federal government. So it goes on a case-by-case basis. California, for example, their particular Medicaid program is funded by California and the federal government at a certain percentage that they set independent of other states. Now, I'm sure you know what time it is at this point in the episode. It's time to bring the union into it. Because IPs, individual providers, are being paid through Medicaid, a government-funded program, there was an argument made that because they're being paid through a government program, they are technically government employees and thus fall under the public sector realm of work, and thus are subject to their respective states' rules regarding unionization and the deduction of union dues. This issue that we face is not a new one. Today, it is not required for IPs to be unionized, and the Supreme Court's rulings in two major cases, Harris v. Quinn and Janus v. AFSCME, have affirmed the right of IPs to opt out or decline membership. But as with every example I talk about, there is a huge financial incentive to both get IPs in a union and to keep them there. Before I go into the financial incentive, though, as if I don't talk about that enough on this channel, I talk about it every episode because it's always relevant, I want to first go into the explanation of why it's completely asinine to push for IPs to be unionized in the first place. Y'all know historically there are provisions that set up why unions came into existence, particularly in the private sector. There were terrible and dangerous working conditions, insane hours, low pay, mortality rates, etc. Unions came about due to a factory workplace that had no standardizations in it in the entire culture of factory workplaces, because they were doing God knows what in them. While those variables today have since been standardized, if we're going to create a spectrum of workplaces that have the high capacity for danger and workplaces that have low capacity for danger, the risk of work is higher in factories. Generally, if we're starting with that, factories are at one end and other places move down the line. If we take one step down to the classic 9-to-5 office environment where unions might deal with workplace concerns like overtime pay, vacay time, layoffs, specific office environment issues, whatever. But if we take it even another step, we come to the workplace of IPs. IPs are working in a home for a client that's usually a family member. So they're not dealing with an unsafe environment since it's their own home. And vacay pay, overtime pay doesn't really apply. Layoffs are kind of irrelevant since it's entirely up to the client, the care receiver, on when they want to dismiss or hire a new caregiver. So given that there's that massive spectrum on environment for public workers, and in the particular case of IPs, the issues for which unions were created to address don't even exist in the environment of IPs, what is the union even doing in this scenario? What are they trying to accomplish? What can they accomplish? Unsurprisingly, the only thing that unions have the ability to influence in the realm of IPs is the stipend that IPs get. So this all comes back down to the money. Say that the union does decide to advocate for a change in payment or schedule for IPs. To even be successful in this endeavor, the union has to exercise a monumental amount of power and influence to make this happen. Because the money to expand the program isn't just going to appear out of thin air, the unions would need to convince other budgets to be downsized so that the Medicaid budget can be increased, which is certainly no small feat, by the way. The only states that have ever been successful in this are blue states, who then receive an immediate financial benefit from the increase in funds that are going into Medicaid. Numbers-wise, IPs are relatively low paid by any standard, and the people on the program aren't exactly rolling in cash either. It's a program intended to give financial support. So tell me why unions know this, yet choose to charge IPs one of the highest dues percentages in the country. Today, IPs see a whopping 3% of their gross wages deducted from their Medicaid payments. And given that the standard dues deduction is 1 to 2%, a whole 3% is completely bonkers. 3% is an insane thing to charge people who are already struggling to make ends meet. This outrageous rate, combined with limited representational obligations, because again, what are unions even doing in this scenario, leaves unions with more money than they know what to do with. How much money, you ask? Service Employees International Union, SEIU Local 2015, raked in over $114 million in dues in 2024 from their 250,000 members, and they report a cash reserve of $142 million. That amount of money is almost unfathomable to me. Like, how on earth does union membership claim to be friends of the working class, yet charge families who they know are struggling so much they need to be on Medicaid to be supported, that they knowingly charge those people some of the highest dues rates in the country? How morally bankrupt are these people that they will sacrifice the health and prosperity of the working class that they claim to care about? This is a slush fund. It is a free fall of cash into union coffers. That's why we're a fan of changing the laws around Medicaid to stop the diversion of Medicaid funds into unions via dues collections. President Trump actually started to make waves on this front towards the end of his first term in 2019. He issued a final rule to stop states from skimming union dues and political contributions. After a noble multi-year effort from the team here at Freedom Foundation, which unfortunately was rendered useless after Trump's term came to an end and Biden chose to take office and discard all of the hard work we had done to support it. Even though I'm focusing a lot on Medicaid specifically, it's worth noting that the system that makes this cash flow possible is automatic payroll deductions. Automatic payroll deductions are kind of just what they seem to be. It's in the name. It's when you sign up for a union and your dues get automatically deducted from your paycheck each month, or whatever the interval of payment is. Theoretically, it's similar to a subscription model in the sense that you automatically pay your fee to a company at a monthly, bi-weekly interval, or whatever it is. However, the key difference here is how unions get your financial information. In a standard subscription model, you have to choose to enroll, then you go through the process of voluntarily putting in your personal information, your billing information, your credit card number, etc. And then every time money is deducted from your account, debited to pay the balance, you get an email or a notification otherwise letting you know that it's been deducted. With automatic payroll deductions, since it's a program through the government, the unions already have all of your personal information. So all they need to do to kickstart the process to deductions is get your signature. Not only does this make it way easier for union leaders to commit forgery, since most times they don't even take the time to compare signatures from membership cards to signatures that are on file for each employee, but this also puts the onus of stopping deductions entirely on the government system. In a regular subscription, if I want to stop paying, it takes me maybe 2 minutes to go online and cancel it. I don't have to call a third party and then wait around until they decide it's time to cancel the subscription. However, that is exactly what happens in the union sector. Union leadership is heavily motivated by your money, and accompanied by their insanely difficult opt-out timelines, they have all the ability to keep you paying dues. I mean, how many cases has FF worked on that deal with unions ignoring opt-out requests, committing forgery, just to keep their members forcefully paying dues? It's really unnerving that the government has willingly handed this power over the American workers to union organizations. Plus, some unions, if you can even believe it, are now pushing for verbal consent to work for automatic payroll deductions. This means that unions wouldn't even need to put in the effort to commit forgery because they could claim that an informal discussion on your lunch break qualified as consent for dues deductions. These actions absolutely reek of desperation. In fact, it screams of bad faith and self-serving interests on the part of union leadership. And I still can't get over the fact that union sympathizers and favorites still somehow believe that a union can have their best interests at heart, yet also know that unions are purposefully victimizing some of the most vulnerable populations in America. And that's why we're calling on the elimination of automatic payroll deductions in its entirety, because as I've just laid out, it's an overpowered tool that no one should have access to, least of all government unions. Remember, the fight for tomorrow starts today. It's time to show unions what we're made of, and boy howdy, I'm ready to do that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you at the front line.